You're not waiting until you're ready. You're waiting for a guarantee. Those have never been the same thing. That folder named Planning, 41 documents deep, and nothing shipped, that isn't laziness. That's discipline, aimed at the wrong target. There are 6 reasons that doing it badly first beats waiting until you're ready. And over the next half hour, I'll give you all 6. The first one takes the word ready apart entirely, because you have the sequence backwards. The 6th is the one that has been quietly charging you interest this whole time. Start with the room, because a room is easier to read than the person standing in it. There's a guitar on a stand in the corner, and the price tag is still looped around the headstock. On the shelf, 11 books about running, 4 of them still in shrink wrap, and beneath the shelf, a pair of shoes worn twice. On the laptop, that folder. Market research, 3 name lists, a competitor breakdown, a logo brief, 2 versions of a business plan, and 1 file called Notes to Self that hasn't been opened since March. On the phone, a language app with a 900-day streak and not 1 conversation with a living human being. 900 consecutive days is not the behavior of someone who lacks willpower. 11 books is not apathy. That is a person with industrial-grade discipline, spending all of it on the runway.
Seneca described this almost 2,000 years ago, and on the shortness of life. He wrote that the greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. Not idleness, expectancy, the constant leaning forward into a version of your life that hasn't been asked to exist yet. Preparation is the only form of avoidance that wears the uniform of work. It costs hours, it tires you out, it feels a Saturday, and at the end of it, you are depleted in a way that feels earned, but it produces no evidence. And there's a second tell, sharper than the first. Preparation has no natural ending. There's always one more book, one more course, one more month until things settle down. Action ends. That's what makes it terrifying, and that's what makes it useful. So the question was never whether you're ready. The question is what the smallest recoverable bad version would look like, and you've known that answer for months. It's precisely why you keep changing the subject. Which raises something worth sitting with. What is it exactly that you're waiting to feel? So the first reason, and it starts by taking the word itself apart. Readiness is not granted to you before the act. It is manufactured by the act. A man of 38 decides he's going to learn to swim. He never learned as a child, and by now the not knowing has grown a skin of embarrassment around it. So he approaches the problem the way he approaches every problem. Seriously. 4 months of getting ready. Shoulder mobility 3 times a week. 19 videos about the freestyle catch. Some of them paused and rewound. In month 5, he gets in the pool. Within about 90 seconds, he discovers that not 1 minute of the preparation transferred, because the thing he actually had to learn was how to exhale slowly while his face was underwater and his entire body was sending the confident screaming report that he was drowning. 10 minutes in the shallow end taught him more than 4 months on the carpet. Albert Bandura spent his career mapping where belief in your own capability comes from, and he found 4 sources. 3 of them are secondhand: encouragement, watching someone else manage it, talking yourself calm. The 4th is mastery experience, the direct bodily memory of having done the thing and survived it, and it outweighs the other 3 put together. Which means that quiet internal green light you're waiting for is a report. Your nervous system files it after the evidence comes in. Waiting to feel ready before you begin is waiting for a receipt for a purchase you never made. So treat the feeling of unreadiness the way you treat weather. You go out in it at the level you can manage today, and you let your confidence be updated by evidence rather than argued into existence. That handles the feeling. It doesn't touch the thing sitting in your head with no edges on it, the project that expands every time you look directly at it, which is the second reason, and it works by shrinking the problem rather than growing you. A bad first version converts an infinite problem into a finite one. A woman is asked to give the toast at her sister's wedding. She has 6 weeks, and she spends the first 3 in what she calls thinking about it, which in practice means composing perfect opening lines in the shower and losing them somewhere between the towel and the kitchen. Every version she builds is competing against every other possible version, including the ones she hasn't thought of yet, and against the toast their mother gave at a cousin's wedding in 2011, which was, everyone agrees, very good. 4 days out, stuck on a motorway slip road with the engine idling, she opens the voice memo app and just talks. 12 minutes. It rambles, with 2 dead ends where she loses the thread entirely. There's also, unplanned, a story about a stolen bicycle in 1997 that she hadn't thought about in years. It's genuinely bad. But that evening she has something she hasn't had for 3 weeks, a specific object with specific problems. Cut the first 4 minutes, keep the bicycle and move it to the front. The bad 12 minutes became a good 3, and the good 3 were never reachable from the blank page. Before anything exists, your mind has to hold the entire possibility space at once, which is why the task feels heavy in a way that has nothing to do with the actual labor involved. The moment a bad version exists, that infinite space collapses into a list. You can finish a list. 2 findings sit underneath this. The first is the planning fallacy, documented by Bueller, Griffin, and Ross, who asked students to estimate when they'd finish their own theses. The average estimate came in around 34 days. The average reality was closer to 55. What matters most is the detail buried in that work. Even when students were explicitly asked for a worst-case estimate, assuming everything went wrong, they were still optimistic. Imagined work is frictionless, and friction is only visible from inside. The second is older. In 1927, Bluma Zeigarnik found that started but unfinished tasks stay active in memory and exert a real pull toward completion. Notice the word, started. An unstarted project isn't waiting patiently for you. It isn't in the system at all. It's just a feeling you have about yourself, which is a much less useful thing to own.
Teresa Amabile collected thousands of daily diary entries from working professionals, looking for what most reliably produced a good inner working life. Recognition came in low, so did reward, pressure, and vision handed down from above. What topped the list was the experience of making tangible progress on work that mattered to them, even small progress, especially small progress, which recasts the bad first version entirely. It's the smallest available unit of the only substance any of this is made of. So give it a body in the next 24 hours, however deformed. Not to make it good, to convert an infinite question into a finite list of problems. Which brings me to the third reason, and it's the one that costs the most to ignore. There's something worse than an unfinished project. A beautifully finished plan, built entirely out of the assumptions you already had. Reality is the only source of correction, and it will not say a word until you move. Every plan is a model of the world, constructed from what you currently believe. That's its ceiling. You can refine a plan for a year, and at the end of that year, it will be more elegant, more detailed, more internally consistent, and wrong in exactly the same places it was wrong on day one. In 1903, 2 projects were trying to put a person in the air.
Samuel Langley had the backing of the War Department and the Smithsonian, around $50,000, an enormous sum, and the prestige of being one of the most respected scientists in America. He built a full-scale manned aircraft, the aerodrome, and launched it by catapult from the roof of a houseboat on the Potomac in front of the press. It went into the river. He rebuilt it and launched again in December in front of the press again. It went into the river again. Meanwhile, two brothers who repaired bicycles in Dayton, Ohio, had spent under $1,000 of their own shop money traveling to a windswept sandbar in North Carolina, chosen for its steady wind and its soft sand, because they expected to crash. And they did, over and over, in short, unglamorous hops that mostly ended badly. When the published lift tables that everyone in aviation trusted stopped matching what they saw with their own eyes, they went home and built a wind tunnel out of a wooden box and tested the shapes themselves. The tables were wrong. The Wright brothers outcrashed him. 9 days after his second Potomac failure, they flew. Anders Ericsson named the mechanism in his work on deliberate practice. Skill grows where repetition meets immediate, specific feedback about what went wrong. Without that feedback, 10,000 hours only entrench you deeper in whatever you were already doing.
So design your first attempt for information rather than for outcome. The question isn't what's the best version you could make, it's what is the cheapest thing you could do this week that might prove you wrong. Then run it before you refine the plan one more time. Now, everything so far has treated your problem as a problem of method. It's a decent frame, and it's incomplete, because you already know most of it. You've known it for years, and you still haven't started, which means method was never the thing holding the door shut. What's holding it shut is being seen. The fourth reason, the audience you're afraid of does not exist at the resolution you're imagining. The dread isn't really about the bad first draft. It's about someone encountering you in the state of being bad, a colleague, a stranger, your brother-in-law, and quietly revising their estimate of you downward permanently. That's the fear underneath the courses and the 900 days. Gilovich, Medvec, and Savitsky measured how accurate it is. Students who wore an embarrassing t-shirt into a room of peers guessed half of them would notice. A quarter did. That gap has a name, the spotlight effect, and it is the size of your miscalculation. A man does 5 minutes at an open mic on a Tuesday night. 22 people in the room, most of them other comics waiting their turn, 3 of them mouthing their own opening lines. He gets through the first joke, a small laugh, enough to breathe on, and then his second one vanishes. Setup, turn, all of it, gone as though it had never been written down. He stands in the silence for what he will later swear was a full minute and was almost certainly 4 seconds. He mumbles something about the weather, thanks them, and walks off into the dark at the back of the room, past a table of people who have already gone back to their drinks. He doesn't sleep that night. He replays it in the shower, on the train, at his desk at 11 in the morning for no reason at all. Each replay adding a detail he isn't sure happened. 6 days of that. The following Tuesday, he makes himself go back, braced, rehearsing the apology he'll offer if anyone brings it up. The bartender who worked that night says hello and asks what he wants. Nothing else. And behind the man's head, mounted high on the wall, a muted football match is playing, which is exactly what the bartender had been watching the week before. Seneca, in the 13th letter, put it in one line. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The humiliation you're protecting yourself from is a private film with an audience of one, and you are also the projectionist. So stop budgeting for an audience that isn't attending. Your bad first attempt will be noticed by fewer people, less sharply, and for a much shorter time than your imagination is currently insisting. But if barely anyone is watching, why does a single attempt still feel so weighty? Because the 5th reason is about arithmetic you've been doing wrong. You think you need one good one. Quality is a byproduct of volume, and volume only exists if you can tolerate being bad. There's a story in Art and Fear by David Bales and Ted Orland about a ceramics teacher who graded half his class on quantity, pots weighed on a bathroom scale at the end of term, and the other half on a single perfect pot. All the finest work came from the quantity group, while the perfectionists finished the semester with elegant theories and a small pile of dead clay. Bring that down to a Sunday. A woman decides she's going to learn to make bread. Not a course, not a book, one loaf every Sunday for a year. The first is flat and dense enough to prop a door. The fourth is raw in the middle. The seventh is scorched on top because she trusted the oven dial instead of her own eyes. And somewhere around the 11th, she notices that the dough tells her things with its surface, a slackness or a tightness under the heel of her hand that no recipe had ever mentioned.
Her hands are absorbing the answers to 100 small questions about flour and water and heat, none of which she could have thought her way to. By loaf 50, what comes out of that oven is better than anything she can buy within 10 miles of her house. She became a better baker during the loaves, with flour on her forearms, not between them. So set a quota. Let the standard argue with itself afterward. Decide how many attempts you'll produce this month, 4, 10, 30, and accept that you cannot improve at a rate faster than your attempts, all of which still lets you say, fine, but next month, which leaves the 6th, and the 6th has a meter running. Waiting is not free. It charges compound interest and takes payment in the currency of who you think you are. Delay presents itself as the neutral option, the one where nothing happens, nothing is risked, and you simply revisit it later when conditions improve. That accounting is wrong. A man decides at 31 that he's going to open a small woodworking business. He's good with his hands, he's made furniture for 3 friends, and the demand is plainly there. At 31, starting badly would have cost him almost nothing. A clumsy website with photographs taken in poor light, some awkward pricing conversations where he undercharges and feels foolish, a few pieces he isn't proud of. At 39, something heavier has happened. The business has become load-bearing. It's the thing that makes his current job survivable, the private proof carried into every dull Monday that this is not all there is. Beginning badly now risks something considerably worse than failure. It risks taking the dream out of the display case, handling it, and discovering that it's ordinary, that he's ordinary at it, at least at first, like everyone. At 31, the price of entry was mild embarrassment. At 39, the price is his self-concept. He didn't get less brave. The ticket got more expensive while he stood in the queue. And the mechanism underneath is the same one that keeps every folia alive. Every time you retreat from the feared thing, you get immediate, real relief, and that relief functions as a reward. It teaches your brain that the retreat was correct, and that the fear was the right size all along. Do that for 8 years, and you have been feeding it faithfully twice a day. Exposure treatment works by interrupting that loop. Approach the thing, stay, and let the nervous system collect the evidence that nothing catastrophic occurred. Epictetus asked his students one question: how long will you wait before you demand the best of yourself? And elsewhere, more bluntly, if you wish to be a writer, write. So price the delay, not just the attempt. Ask what one more year of not starting will cost you, in skill you won't have, and in who you'll have to become to keep explaining the gap. Then set that against the cost of one bad afternoon. That's all 6, which would be tidy, except that if I stop here, you'll misuse it. And there's one arena where this advice is not merely wrong, but dangerous. Take the practical part first, because just start is useless as a slogan. It needs constraints, and there are 3. The first is the deliberate B. Myers, run on a clock.
Decide before you begin that this version will be mediocre, and make that the actual target rather than an accident you're bracing for. You cannot be disappointed by an outcome you commissioned. Then give it one fixed block on the calendar, timer running, where the only condition for success is that something exists at the end of it, not something good, something. The second is one witness. Show the bad version to exactly one person whose judgment you trust and whose affection you don't doubt. Feedback you only ever give yourself is rumination, and rumination never contradicts you. A crowd will only frighten you into hiding. One person can tell you the second half doesn't work without making you want to disappear. The third is the reversibility test, and it's the honest limit of everything I've said tonight.
Nobody should pack a parachute badly first, and nobody should send a badly considered resignation email at 11 at night. The distinction that matters is not between important and unimportant. Your business matters, your book matters. It's between recoverable and unrecoverable. And notice what surgeons actually do. A surgeon absolutely does it badly first, thousands of times, on cadavers, in simulation, under the eye of someone who will stop their hand. That isn't an exception to the principle. It's the principle, engineered. Enormous quantities of deliberate badness in an arena built so the badness is survivable. Which is where the promise I made you at the start comes to, the claim that you have the sequence backwards. You've been treating readiness as a condition that must be present before the work can begin. Readiness is a residue. It's what the work leaves behind on you, attempt after attempt, most of them poor, accumulating into competence, and then, much later and almost unnoticed, into the feeling of being someone who can do this. Mastery experience, the pull of the unfinished, the sandbar at Kitty Hawk, 50 pounds of clay, they all describe the same direction of travel, and it runs the opposite way to the one you've been standing in. So build the sandbox, then be reckless inside it. Choose the arena where failure is recoverable.
Set a target you'd be slightly ashamed to name out loud. Run the clock, show one person, and go again before your nerve has time to reorganize itself into a new and very reasonable plan. Now go back to the room. The guitar with the price tag still looped around the headstock, the shrink-wrapped books, the folder called Planning, 41 documents deep. That room belongs to someone with real, industrial-grade discipline who was never told which direction to point it. One more thing to carry out with you. Somewhere, in a version of your life that was available 2 years ago, there's a person who has already been doing this badly for 2 years, and who is therefore, right now, good at it. Nobody celebrates them. They are simply competent, in the ordinary way that people become competent. That person is not more talented than you, and was never more ready. They started earlier, in worse condition, with worse results, and let time do the arithmetic. The distance between you and that person is not ability. It's one bad afternoon, repeated. The version of you that you're waiting to become is on the far side of the work, not this side of it. There's no route around it. The only way to meet them is to go and be embarrassing for a while, in a place where being embarrassing costs you almost nothing. The guitar is right there. The tag comes off in a second.
If this is the kind of thinking you want in your week, stay close. There's more here, and it's all built the same way. Keep listening.